Hi, welcome to Keep On Pushing TV. I am your host, Devon Harris. And yeah, you know what we do here, right? We share ideas and insights that are going to challenge you and inspire you to keep on pushing and live your absolute best life. So if that's something you're interested in, even remotely, yeah, you are in the right place. So again, welcome to Keep On Pushing TV. Our guest today is a dynamic professional keynote speaker who has the unique ability to connect, motivate, and inspire even the most buttoned down of audiences in a matter of minutes. Over the last 20 years, he has been able to leverage his natural speaking talent to find professional success as an entrepreneur. He has spent the last 10 of those years cultivating his passion for motivating others through his active membership and leadership in the prestigious speaking organization Toastmasters International, as well as the Mankind Project. As a result, he has been able to realize his dream by delivering powerful keynote speeches for a wide variety of corporate and social organizations. He is also an author, a husband, and of course, a proud father. And I am proud to welcome to the show Red Katz. Red, welcome to Keep On Pushing, bro.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, man. So, you have a book. I just mentioned you're an author. Your book, Live Your Eulogy. I thought it was an interesting title. It reminds me actually of an exercise where you're at a funeral and suddenly, you realize that it's actually your funeral and, people are there, speaking about the kind of person you were, your accomplishments, your character, your contributions, the impact you've made on their lives and so on. A very effective exercise, I would say. Make sure that you're kind of aligned with your vision and your purpose. Um, what is that what you're thinking, or what were you thinking when you came up with the title of your book?
So that's a great question. So during the course of my life, I faced challenges like many other people. And at one point in my life, I basically lost everything. You named the challenge, short of health, I faced it. And I pretty much lost everything that was important for me. And I could give you that list if you'd like. It's went through a horrific divorce, product of divorce, cannot see my children as much as I wanted to, personal and corporate bankruptcy, anxiety, depression, did not really have a place to live. And I'm giving you just a quick synopsis of it all, of course. And as I was going through that journey, so to speak, as I lost everything, one of the benefits of losing everything, but I don't suggest it to anyone, but one of the benefits is one gets to start fresh again. Mm-hmm. And I thought to myself, well, what kind of life do I want to live? Like I have this opportunity, so to speak. I may as well take it and discover what kind of life do I want to live. And I started thinking that, as you said, at funerals, I started thinking, well, what do they speak about? They don't never speak about the person, about how much money they've made. They never speak about the deals they've done. Most people, they speak about the essence of the person, what that person's about. Well, she was an incredible grandmother. He was incredibly philanthropic. It's kind of like the essence and the drive of that person. And I thought to myself, well, that's the life I want to live. I want to live my eulogy every single day. That life that I want them to speak about me about, or anybody, that's the life I want to live. Not the life of this guy. He worked from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. every single day. Like who wants that? And so I thought, well, that's the life I want to live. I want to live my eulogy. And I switched the spelling to Y-O-U-L-O-G-Y because eulogy sounded a little depressing, but this eulogy is really about the life we live, not about our death. And to live that life, that passion, what we're meant to be on this planet, the things that we align with every single day.
Yeah, I was just thinking as you were talking, about the fact that you switched the spelling from the traditional spelling of eulogy to Y-O-U, which in a way, which suggests to me that you're talking about not the end of your life, but you living the life that you want to live.
Exactly right. You and living that life. Exactly right.
And so as you speak about, and we're going to delve into this a little bit later, but, as you speak about the fact that you lost everything and you're starting over from ground zero, we are right now, not just in the US, not just in New York where we both are, but globally, are kind of in the throes of this coronavirus pandemic that's threatening to upend everything. And I'm guessing that there will be some people, some companies who will, at the end of this, be starting over from ground zero as well. Based on your own experiences, what suggestions would you have for them?
Well, I'd like to say it's going to be easy, but it's not. It's really not. I've learned a long time ago not to sugarcoat anything. When I lost everything, it was really hard. It was really, really hard. It was. It's not about saying it's going to be okay. I mean, it will be, and it will be hard. And I guess what I would say is, the only thing that I can share with is my experience and the experience I hear from other people, is that success is really determined by perseverance and picking ourselves up and moving through. And as you write, keep on pushing. And so if people, and I feel for them tremendously, I really do. I feel for them. People that are going to lose financially everything. Their businesses will go out of business. Like, that's going to happen. I see it. Mm-hmm. And here's what I want to share with them is my experience is lean on the support system that you've got, because we're not here on this planet by ourselves. We're not meant to do it by ourselves. The more pillars we have holding us up, the easier it will be to rebuild. And at that point, if one has lost everything, use that opportunity as I did to say, okay, well, because as if we have a business and we'll call it successful, we may even plow along, but not really think, well, this is what I'm meant to be on this planet. I'm not using all of my resources. And so if that happens to us, while it may be hard, my offer is discover what you're really meant to do and use that opportunity to maybe forge a new path in your life. Because now you have nothing to lose anymore. Mm-hmm. Like when I restarted, I had nothing to lose. I lost everything. There's almost no risk. I may as well do something I'm loving to do that really aligns with me. So that would be my suggestion, is look deep inside. I mean, I teach about self-awareness and emotional intelligence, and see really what your gifts are and maximize those.
And so I assume that this applies not just to this crisis of the coronavirus, but any other crisis that we may experience in our lives as well, right? It creates an opportunity for us to start afresh. And you made a really good point that it sucks, and it's going to suck. But I guess the starting point for that is to embrace the suck, and nobody wants to hear that, but it's one of those hard truths of life, right?
Yeah, what I've also learned, what I also want people to hear, is that from every setback, and I can literally say every setback, I've learned from it, and I've grown from it. And I mean, quite frankly, 10, 15 years ago, maybe even closer than that, if the coronavirus happened, I'd be as bad off as everyone else. But I've learned from the past around, being a little more conservative, not living hand to mouth and all that. So when a crisis hits, it doesn't destroy me. Mm-hmm. It doesn't destroy me. Yeah. People live their lives. I've seen it where they're like, it's just going to keep going, like whatever's happening. But that's not the case. No one could have ever predicted this. And that's what I've learned from my trials and tribulations, that we have no control. We have no control. We have no control.
Yeah.
And I say that 3 times because we think we do. I think I do, but we don't.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's how we manage those situations when they pop up. You started off your book, your eulogy, by asking the question, who are you? Or more accurately, encouraging us to ask, who am I? Why is that so important? Why is it so important for us to know who we are?
So why that's important is I use this analogy because it's very visual. They use the old adage, putting a round peg in a square hole, and it's a toss away line. Like, oh, don't put a round peg in a square hole. But I think if we actually think about it for a moment, so I ask people to visualize that, taking a round peg and putting it in a square hole, just think of that, what that looks like. that really hurts. That's so painful. I'm basically shaving off pieces of myself, molding myself to put my round peg in a square hole.
Mm-hmm.
And so understanding who we really are and tapping into who I really am and understanding what I'm really about, then I could put a round peg in a round hole, so to speak, in my life, in relationships, in my career. And a round peg in a round hole, I kind of consider that like a cylinder to a car. The smoother that is, or to a machine, the faster it goes. Boom, 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 boom. Round peg in a square hole, you're not moving.
Yeah.
So if I understand who I really am and the self-awareness piece, I'll understand that I use this term self-saboteur. I'll understand, and we could dive into that in a little while, how that plays a role. But it's really about understanding what I'm really about, not what my parents or my teachers or my friends have influenced me, so that I'm actually not authentic. And when I'm not authentic, the self-saboteur comes out, and basically we all put these obstacles in front of us and we don't achieve the goals we're looking to achieve.
Yeah, and without that authenticity, we're not, we have no chance actually of living our best lives, as it were.
Right, correct.
You speak about discovering yourself versus finding yourself. What's the difference?
I'm sorry, repeat the question again?
You spoke about discovering yourself versus finding yourself.
Right, so
what do you think the difference is?
So discovering is more about, well, the flip side of the same coin, I think. Discovering yourself is really digging deep, asking the question. So I kind of look at it as, Freud has this thing that's called the iceberg theory, where we see the tip of the iceberg, but the bulk of it is underwater that we don't see. And I consider that, like, not to get too, psychology focused here, but our conscious self is kind of like what we do on a day-to-day basis, but the reasons behind it, the bottom of the iceberg, is really discovering ourselves and understanding why we do it, the wizard behind the curtain. It's like, okay, I showed up late, I'm sorry. The train was late, so to speak. So that's just the tip of the iceberg. But I always ask people, well, are you always late? And they might say yes or no. And I'm like, well, when was the last time you were late for a plane? Most of the time it's no. And so that's uncovering why they were really late. Why they were really late is perhaps it wasn't important for them. And why wasn't it important? It's to continue to ask the questions about myself so that I can discover or uncover what's going on. And actually, I would say the finding myself comes after all of that, is when I've discovered all of these different attributes of myself, but then finding the real me, the authentic me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And, I'm guessing, obviously, crisis, challenges like the ones you described you went through, the ones that, many of us are going to be facing right now with this coronavirus, I guess will force us, many of us, to ask those hard, deep, penetrating questions for us to discover ourselves. But I'm guessing that's not the preferred way, and we don't have to wait until a crisis to discover who we are, correct?
It's funny. We don't, but I have yet to meet the person that really dives deep without first facing some sort of challenge, not as severe as the coronavirus, but something, whether it's a breakup, whether it's losing some money, whether it's getting fired. We can choose to go as deep as we want to really look. So I'll use the coronavirus as an example. I lost everything. So I thought to myself, I don't want to do that again. Like, I don't. I want some stability in my life. And so I said, okay, well, now the money that I make, I'm going to put it away. Now, I can never have predicted the coronavirus, obviously, in my entire lifetime. But people that might think, well, it's always, the gravy train's always going to, pass my stop. Well, that's not true. So I'm not blaming each person on where they are. They didn't count on this. Perhaps, obviously they didn't. And is there a way, after suffering through this, to understand how can I change my life so that it doesn't happen to me the next time an unforeseen crisis comes my way? But I hardly ever, I've yet to meet a person that hasn't done self-awareness where they haven't faced a challenge. It doesn't have to be as big as mine or the coronavirus or anything like that. It doesn't. But when, I guess the point is, when we face a crisis, my offer and my thought is, don't blame anyone else. Look within. Look within. Even a
It,
minor crisis.
indeed. I kind of look at crisis as well, challenges as obviously we have to get through them, but they're also a proving ground. They're a preparation for the next one, because oftentimes the next one is bigger.
You know, my dad says this, that my parents are still alive, thank God. My dad said this to me a long time ago. He said, the storm's gonna come. It's gonna come. What it, you know, in life, relationships, work, he goes, it's gonna come. It's gonna hit everyone at some point in your life. And he's like, do your best to be prepared. You know, plant those roots firmly because the storm's gonna come. And he's right.
Yeah.
I have yet to meet any, people see other people, their lives, and they see them on the outside. And they think, wow, that person has a perfect life. They don't have a clue what goes on inside or what that person has faced. There's no one that has a curve like this in their life. There's nobody.
No, it's up and down. You spoke, Red, about hitting that mental pause button. Why is that so important, and how do you do it?
So hitting the mental pause button, it's giving us a time to breathe. Give us a time to breathe, to take a breath, to self-examine, so to speak. It's like, all right, pause. Just take a breath, just relax, about not stressing, about understanding what's going on. And also, you know, it's kind of like, sometimes people have a bad day. We all have bad days. I have bad days. Sometimes people ask me, Red, are you always happy? Because they'll see after I speak, I'm like, no, I'm a human being. I'm not always happy. I've got lousy days. And sometimes those lousy days, it's really kind of like that mental pause button is saying, all right, Red, it's time to take a step back. My body, my mind says it's time to recharge. Recharge. Take a self-care day, whatever the self-care day, self-care week, turn it off, so that when we turn it back on, the battery's recharged.
Yeah, we all need that for sure, self-care. So, you know, we started off talking about the challenges that significant challenges that you have faced, that you have prevailed, you have overcome. But that also included, you know, deep depression and suicidal thoughts. But somehow in the middle of that, at the end of that, you, despite having suicidal thoughts, you were able to conclude that life was great. And there seems to be a dissonance there. Talk us through that. How did you arrive and make that leap, I guess, from our connection from being deeply depressed to accepting, how great life is?
So I call this defining moment, and we all have the defining moments in our life. And there were a couple of them. The one that, just to quickly address, let's talk about the self-saboteur first, because I feel that's very important. It kind of sets ourselves up there. So one story, and I know that people identify with stories, is I remember that, and this is the self-saboteur playing in my brain, and we all have it. We all have that self-saboteur. They play with us. It's that person that, it's a lot of ego. And I remember being on the beach, and I'm closing this deal to buy another accessory company, because I had this vision in my brain. I'd aggregate all these companies and have this conglomerate, like that was my thing. And my wife at the time was on the beach. Our kids were in camp, and I'm kind of walking back and forth with the phone and closing this deal. I remember sitting down on the beach chair next to my wife and going, I did it. Beautiful sunny day. Fast forward just a few months later, very different story. I'm sitting at my dining room table in our apartment on the Upper West Side. Everyone's sleeping, and I bought this company, and I have all these invoices laid out on the floor in front of me. And I'm looking at them, and I put them in alphabetical order, and I kind of pile them up on top of each other. And I start having, like, I guess it's sort of an anxiety attack going, I can't pay these. How am I going to pay these? It's impossible. I bought the Titanic. That's what I did. And it was like an eye-opening moment. And meanwhile, the self-saboteur was the guy telling me, you buy this, you're going to be good, you're going to be great, this is going to happen for you. You're going to be it's like ego, like you're going to have this conglomerate, be on top of the world. I was all money-driven. Of course, that was the beginning of the end. Company collapse, divorce, anxiety, depression. And the next defining moment that I'll share is I'm standing on 10th Avenue and 28th Street. At that point, no wife, challenging relationship with my kids, no money, anxiety, going through the depression. I got off the phone with my dad and I'm crying. And I'm standing in the doorway and I couldn't take the pain anymore. The emotional pain was way on overload. And I looked at the Hudson River and I'm like, I could just jump in. And I couldn't take the emotional pain anymore. It was overwhelming. The thing that brought me back was I thought of my 3 children. And I thought, well, they need me and I need them. And that was the switch for me. And from that was the catalyst to go, wait a second. I may not have a lot of things, but I still do have a lot of blessings. So the attitude switched over to gratitude. And so what I realized and what I share with people is we think we want all the materialistic things. And that was in my brain, to be happy, to be successful, etc. But actually at that moment, even though I'd lost so much, I still had my kids, I had my friends, I had my family. I could lean on all of them, which is what I did. And the support system, I had my men's group. And that helped me. Those are all blessed. I had my health still, my physical health. I was going through a mild depression there, but I had my physical health. And so that was the catalyst going, wait, I have these blessings. Let me capitalize on those and that will propel me forward. And that was the turning point for me. So what I always share with people is somehow our mind skews to the things we don't have, that we think that we need.
Right.
But we have so much more than what we need. Most of them are wants.
Really important point that you touched on there, Red, because I was just speaking about this earlier this morning as well. This whole business of gratitude, and when the world is falling apart around us, when we are, in the throes of a coronavirus pandemic, and it looks like many people are going to lose things. It's sometimes hard to fathom this idea of being grateful in these circumstances. But the truth is that if we pause to look, and I would argue we don't have to look all that hard, we will find something to be grateful for, right? You were mentally a wreck, but you identified then that you were fine. That was a blessing. You had your kids and your men's group and so on. And so, yeah, if we could, encourage and leave an encouraging word for our audience here, it would be, hey, no matter how bad it gets, there's something that we can be thankful for. Thank you for that message.
Yes, of course. And that is true. No matter, and again, I'm not dismissing even for a second, there are people that are going through incredible hardships. I'm not minimizing that at all. Really painful in the moment, really painful. And I guess what I'm sharing is even through those painful times, so that you can get a little reprieve, maybe focus on your blessings a little bit, because otherwise it can really, those painful times they're very powerful. They can suck you into the abyss.
Yeah.
And if you've got some blessings, and you're right, almost all of us do, whether it's a spouse, a partner, a child, a parents, a friend, your dog, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Tap into that a little bit so it doesn't, the abyss doesn't suck you down.
You mentioned your support group. You mentioned your men's group, and the fact that there are people in our lives there to support us, and that we can lean on and they can pull us through. But you also in your book mentioned that basically the Calvary isn't coming, right? You have to, for want of a better term, participate in your own rescue. Speak about that a little bit for me.
Yeah, people tell me, Red, you're so lucky you've got this incredible. So I belong to a men's group, and what we do is we meet once a week, and of course we speak during the week as well. And it's really about a lot of self-awareness work, about process work, about facilitation, understanding the actions that we take. We develop our life mission. We check in with them to make sure that we're on point, etc. And we love each other, so we support each other in a healthy way. And people have come up to me and said to me, Red, wow, you're so lucky to have this. And I'm like, yeah, I'm lucky. I worked on it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like someone says, wow, you're so lucky to have this successful business to someone. I'm like, yeah, well, it didn't just happen overnight. It's not because of my DNA. I grew it. Here I am today. You know, Jeff Bezos isn't lucky. The guy worked hard. You know, he started out in his basement, and so now he's the wealthiest guy. But it was hard work, and so we can create it. We need to look for it. We need to search out for it. It doesn't just pop up on our doorstep. You know, it doesn't. We have to go out. I say this, we have to go out on the planet and look for the things that we want and put out that energy. And we're going to strike out. Not everyone I speak to speaks the same language as I do. That's okay. I'll just find someone that does until I do, and then we'll connect and we can move forward. So I think people, what happens is I call it in my previous life, they carry a lot of shame around asking for help. And I suggest to people is we don't live alone. There's 7 billion people on the planet, right? Great companies and great relationships don't happen in a vacuum. Go out there and search and find it and let go of the shame, because there's a flip side to that. I always defy people I ask them, when someone comes to you for help, are you happy to give it or not happy? They're like, oh my gosh, I feel so good giving it. Exactly right. Mm-hmm. So go ask for it as well, because people are happy to give help. It makes me feel better to give help. If you don't ask me, I don't know that you need it. So Brene Brown talks about shame, and she's brilliant in all of her books. And let go of the shame, be vulnerable, and solicit help and support.
Yeah, and a really good point as well, ask for help. I think we're often so good at giving help, giving advice, and not asking for it, not receiving it. And one of the things that we do when we neglect to ask for help or receive help is that we rob the person, the giver of the help, the giver of the advice, the opportunity to help and to move their purpose forward as well. You have a beautiful quote in your book by the Dutch painter Vincent van Gogh, where he says, "The fishermen know that the sea is dangerous and the storm terrible, but they have never found these dangers sufficient reason for remaining ashore." What do you think it is that prevents so many people from taking that first step, from expecting everybody else to kind of get them out of their situation instead of, as we just said, participating in their own rescue?
It's funny you brought that up. So my next book that I'm working on, it talks about fear. I write about fear, and not letting fear be the leading emotion to make decisions, right or wrong. So if I'm scared to do something, and Steve Jobs, before he passed, he always said, he goes, in the morning, wake up, look in the mirror. If you're not scared a little bit about what you're going to do today, it's time to do something else. Mm-hmm. And so fear prevents us. We're scared of the unknown. We're scared of taking a risk. We're scared of change. All of these things that are fear-based. And so it prevents us from taking that step. So we're scared of what that sea might look like, what's going to happen. We're scared of, very simple premise, we're scared the water's cold. We want to go swimming. We're scared if it's cold water. Meanwhile, just let's think about it for a second. Even if it's cold water, the more we swim in it, unless it's Arctic cold, right? We swim in it, we get used to the water. Mm-hmm. Great analogy, right? We dive in, we're scared, the water's cold. We touch it with our toe, it's too cold. We dive in, the more we swim, our body gets warmed up, we adjust to the temperature, etc. But we're so scared. We're scared. We're scared to speak to someone. We're scared to have honest conversation. We're scared to take that risk. But I just want to clarify and again, I used this term in my previous life, I'm not suggesting we take crazy risks that will sink us, which I've done. I took risks, that old adage. I wrote checks I couldn't have, I didn't have the money in my bank account.
Couldn't cash. Your body couldn't cash, huh?
Couldn't cash them. It was disastrous. Now I call it calculated risks. Calculated risks. If I don't make it on this attempt, it's okay. Yeah. It won't destroy me or anyone else.
I agree.
I might need like a Band-Aid on my finger. Yeah. I won't need open heart surgery.
So fear, the thing that prevents us from doing all these amazing things that we want to do. What's the answer, man? How do we get past the fear? So
I go back to the self-saboteur again. The self-saboteur is the person that goes, you're scared, don't do it. It's going to be bad. It's going to be horrible, etc. It's it's understanding that. How do we get past it? We look at ourselves and look at our life's experience and go, wait, I was scared of that and I did it and it was okay. So I always take people down the process. What's the worst that can happen? What is the worst that can happen? When we separate the emotions from the data, right? The data is, I'm going to, let's talk about business for a minute. I'm going to invest in this business, and if I lose it, it's okay. If we go down the data and go, well, if I lose a couple of bucks, whatever that might be to each person, it's relative, that's okay, then the fear can dissipate a little bit because that's okay. People are scared to have honest conversations because out of fear, totally. But I'm taking them down the road. What's the worst that can happen? They're not going to hit you or kill you. Maybe if it's not a healthy conversation, they'll scream or they'll call you a name. Okay, that's the worst case. Have you been through that before? Yes. And so it's really understanding that the fear is an emotion that prevents you, but the actual reality is hardly ever as bad as the fear we build up in ourselves.
Indeed, indeed. So that's the phrase I use, Red, when I'm thinking about taking a risk. What's the worst that could happen?
Right.
And if when you arrive at that answer, if that's something you can live with, then you go ahead and you do it, right? So if it's starting a business or investing in a business, what's the worst that can happen? I lose my principal. What, can you live with it? Well, take the risk, right? You want to go talk to somebody over there. What's the worst that can happen? They tell you to get lost and call your names. Well, can you live? Will you survive that? Yep. I mean, I tell people this all the time, and they probably think I'm crazy, but I used to be young and foolish, I guess. And, I don't know how much wiser I am, but my first time on a bobsled track, I just said, look, if I die, I die. And so, quote unquote, I was willing to live with that.
Right.
And it kind of worked out, I did not die. So yeah, what's the worst?
Most of the time, I'm going to guess 90, 95, maybe higher probably, the things that we're scared about, we're not even going to come close to dying. It's going to hurt our feelings, maybe.
Yes.
Pocketbook a little bit.
And we can all survive that, I believe. So, you made the transition from being a professional actor to a motivational keynote speaker. What was it? What went into that decision? Why did you make that transition?
I like the compliment, but I wouldn't call myself a professional actor. So off Broadway.
Wait. Did you get paid? Huh?
I donated all the proceeds to the. I did not accept any money. I didn't do it to get paid. Actually, that wasn't the point. And so I put it on because I wanted to put on the one-man show. But I appreciate that. People, let's put it this way: people did pay to see me.
All right, then. That means you're professional, my friend.
Fair enough. I just want to be accurate. You want to be authentic.
Yes, right? I get it.
Oh my God, I didn't see Red. Where was Red? Was he on a TV show? My whole thing is authenticity and transparency.
Yeah.
Just to be clear, before I get to your answer, the question is, I want to make sure that people hear this, is that I don't have all the answers. I still screw up. I still make mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking lately less huge mistakes, but even, almost 2 years ago, 18 months, I still made massive mistakes in my life, And so these days it's about, my goal is authenticity, transparency, etc. I'm nowhere near perfect, nowhere near. It's a constant working on myself, evolving, etc. Just want to be clear about that.
Mm-hmm.
So what happened was, the story is, I wrote a one-man show, I did it off Broadway, then my entire life collapsed. When I started picking myself back up again, I wrote another one-man show. I wanted to put it on, and it was going to be brilliant, it was funny, but then I thought to myself, I don't want to entertain people anymore, which I could do, I could be funny. Mm-hmm. I wanted to do more than that, but I didn't know, and so I kind of I stopped that process. And then a guy in my men's group, as I'm working through it, because I get feedback from them, he said to me, he goes, Red, why don't you become a speaker? And I'm like, a speaker? There's such a thing? And because, I'm a nice Jewish boy from a nice Jewish family, we grew up to business people, doctors, lawyers, whatever the case may be. A speaker? I was like, what is that? And it kind of opened up my whole eyes, and I was like, wow. And so I thought to myself, that's a great place for me, because it gives me, it sticks to my lane, which is I like to be in, it gives me gives me the space to be me out in front of people.
Mm-hmm.
I've got that energy, and I can give back to the people, give them, teach them what I've learned so that they can live better lives. So it kind of, it hit both spots for me. So that's how it morphed into that. We're like, I could be real on stage. That's my sweet spot.
There you go. Awesome. So what are some of the topics you speak on?
So speak about, I mean, the four top topics are sales, success, communication, and leadership. But they all really revolve around self-awareness and emotional intelligence, the self-saboteur, etc. It really starts with self, all of those.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't speak about how you're going to lead your people. It's going to understand the leader that I have within myself. Precisely. Communication, how I communicate with you with words, with body language, how I communicate with myself, etc. And how the self-saboteur plays a role and fear plays a role in all of that.
Let's talk about communicating with yourself, right? You talk about self-talk, the words you're used to yourself, about yourself. When did you recognize that you know your words, the words you are using, the thoughts you were thinking, your habit of thinking, were not serving you in the best way? And how did you change that?
So I compare this piece to the Matrix. And I always ask people, have you seen the Matrix? Which is, you know, and it's funny because Neo has a chance to take the red pill or the green pill. The green pill, he stays unconscious. The red pill, like my name, he becomes conscious. And it's painful. He's reborn. So after I faced all my challenges, what that did for me was it broke all the shackles and it woke me up to have this other kind of have this consciousness. And so, especially in, let's say, our men's group, where when my men's group, other men hear the words that I'm saying, they're not just spinning in my head. And the vernacular I use is we spin all these stories in my head. So when I spin them in my head, no one's hearing them. But for instance, when I say something to you, Devon, and I'll say, I might say, so I was really scared about this, this, and this. When I'm spinning it in my head, I don't actually hear that. But if you can reflect that back at me, and all you would say to me is, so Red, I heard you were scared. That doesn't even register with me as I'm saying it. But when you reflect that back to me, I'm like, is that what I said? And you'll go, yeah. Like if you would play that tape back, I mean, of course, I'll believe you. I'll say, oh, I said that. So it's a muscle that gets trained. It's like kind of like working our biceps. The more we focus and are conscious of the words we use, the more focus we'll have on them. And so it started, my gosh, it must have started, 15, 20 years ago for me, about the word, using the words muscle and being conscious of it. And then it's just constantly just practicing that muscle, using that muscle of focusing on the words that I use, not using negative words, not blaming, not shaming other people, using words, I statements, we statements, not you, none of that stuff. And it just takes time.
Yeah. What advice would you have for someone as we wind down here, who has traveled a similar path to you? He had lost it all, hit rock bottom, become depressed, entertain suicidal thoughts, that kind of stuff. I know we've touched on it a little bit, but kind of wanted to focus on it some more before we finish.
Yeah. I guess the first one is you're not alone. You're not alone. I mean, Devon, I'm sure people tell you lots of stories. I hear so many stories. You're not alone. You're not. This is not a journey that you're the only one that's facing. It may seem that way. You're not. If you don't have a support system, get a support system, whatever that looks like. You could just Google it and find them. They're out there. People want to help. Mentors, groups, men's groups, women's groups, whatever you can get it. People that want to help. It costs nothing. If you've lost money, you could join a free group. There's Alcoholics Anonymous for alcoholics, right? Et cetera, across the board. There are groups for everyone, that people that just love to give back, and know that you'll make it again. All you have to do is persevere. That's it. That's it.
Yeah.
The old story, it's the tortoise and the hare. The tortoise wins the race. The tortoise wins the race. The turtle wins the race. So
Indeed.
persevere and solicit help, and you'll get it, and you'll make it through.
What would you say, what have you learned about yourself on your journey? Can you distill that?
I'll tell you what I've learned. The more I've learned about myself, the more about myself I realize I don't know.
Yeah.
It's constantly evolving. I mean, okay, I've learned, as I mentioned, I'm writing a book about fear. I've learned that transparency is the only way to go. Not letting fear be the leading emotion, being transparent with people, honest conversations, no matter how hard they are, being authentic to myself and to other people, to live a life that I was meant to live, that we were meant to live, of course, without hurting anyone else. Those are really important things. And it all starts with the self-awareness to really understand where I'm at and the self-saboteur, those two pieces. If I would ever really be able to conquer those two pieces, not that I suggest a perfect life, but that would be the life that I really want to live.
Indeed, indeed. I'm kind of curious as I wrap up here, Red. Where did the name come from? Red, where did that name come from?
Way back when, no one asked me that question, but I'm going to show you the quick answer to it right here. Let's see here. The picture's worth 1,000 words.
So shouldn't you be called Reddish now?
So let me tell you something about redheads. I have 2 children. 2 of my kids have 2 daughters. They have crazy, incredible red hair. So I was called Red when I was 11. Some old guy say, "Hey, Red, get the ball." And my friends were like, "Red," and they called me Red.
Right.
The red personality, though, stays forever inside.
Yeah.
We've got these things, like if 2 redheads are in an elevator, it's like, whoa, there's like, there's so little of us. And the personality stays always, that redhead personality. So that will always be here.
Got you. So you may not show it here, but you show it here.
It's blood, it's passion, it's the sun, it's energy. I'm a redhead.
All right, man. We'll take that. So Red, if someone wanted to find you to, tap into and be exposed to that passion and energy, where do they find you? Talk to us too about your upcoming book and when we might be able to expect that. So
everyone's invited. So redinspires.com, and it's spelled as it's pronounced, Red, R-E-D, inspires, INSPIRES.com. You can sign up I send out a weekly question for yourself so that you can challenge yourself to get to where you want to get to. I've got videos on there, etc., interviews, my own videos, so that you can learn for yourself, blogs, etc. The book is being worked on as we speak, and I'm guessing in the next 90 days it'll be out there. I don't have a title yet. It's untitled.
All right.
The next 90 days, I'm hoping that, with this whole coronavirus, it may be postponed a little bit, but the goal was, the next 90 days or so, we should have it out. Indeed. All right, cool. Dude, this has been enlightening. Thank you so much for spending time with us, sharing with us honestly and transparently about your own journey, the lessons that you have learned that, our audience can also apply to their lives as well as they deal with crises in their life, whether it's the coronavirus crisis or any other ones that might pop up. The lessons and the stories that you have shared, I think will go a long way in helping them to develop the kind of resilience that will allow them to keep on pushing. So thank you so much for gracing us with your presence and keep on pushing. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. God bless. And everyone, stay safe, please. Yes, indeed. Stay safe. Thank you again, Red. Thank you. Thanks for watching. If you haven't done so yet, make sure you click on that subscribe button and hit that bell. You'll get a notification every time we post a new video. And don't forget, share it with your friends, man. They want to be inspired as well, right? So share it. Don't keep it. And before you go on to the next video, visit my website, www.devonharris.com. Keep on pushing.